Hello everyone, back to today's second video. We're doing the ECM 30-day look at for today's second video for the UK and for the rest of Europe as well, looking at temperature and precipitation anomalies for the next 4 weeks, which will take us well into April, of course. We can't show you, unfortunately, mean sea level pressure or 500 millibar height anomalies with this, but you can get a rough idea very often what the pattern is going to be doing from the temperature and precipitation anomalies, actually. So that's what we can do for our second video. The third video later on this afternoon, of course, will be the regular week to 10 day, the update for all of the usual features. First video up today was the winter 2019-2020 forecast verification video. So how verified the gas of its winter 2019-2020 forecast. It didn't come out particularly well, I have to say, but we have done a verification, see what happened during the winter just gone, and that well and truly and firmly shuts the door on winter 2019-2020, or what a winter to forget it was, other than those people that unfortunately had all of that dreadful flooding. But anyway, it's gone now, that's winter done and dusted. Have a look at the verification and see how we did with our forecast. Right, so at the Hungarian Met Office for this one, big thanks to them for supplying us with the charts. We're going to start off with the week 1 temperature anomaly. It's week 12 for the year, of course, for 2020. But it's week 1 for our forecast period. It takes us from the 16th to the 22nd of March. Overall, quite a mild scene across many parts of Europe. So we have above average temperature anomalies in the far west for France, for example. Then they extend right way across the bulk of Europe, all the way to west of Russia. And we have temperature anomalies widely between around 1 and 6 degrees above average. There are exceptions. This southeastern corner, much colder there through Greece and Turkey, very significantly below average temperatures, actually, from the southern Black Sea through Turkey. We see temperature anomalies around 3 to 6 degrees below average in those areas, even a little patch there in central Turkey, a little bit colder than that. And out in the very far northwest, it is also a bit colder. So much of northern Sweden and Norway average to slightly below average, and then coming down into UK and Ireland, again, average to below average. Ireland looks quite chilly, as does Scotland, England and Wales closer to normal. Southern parts of Spain as well, near normal temperatures there. But otherwise, most parts of Europe, those are the exceptions, most parts of Europe actually looking warmer than average. Precipitation-wise, there's a lot of dry weather on offer actually at the moment. It does look very wet across Spain. Look at that, significantly above average rainfall for Spain, especially for eastern parts of Spain, around the costas, for example, looks very wet there. Elsewhere, though, most other parts of Europe are generally quite dry. This western side is a bit more unsettled. Ireland, UK, western parts of France, average to perhaps slightly above average precipitation, hinted at anyway. But anywhere further east of that, looking quite dry. I've got some parts of Norway a bit wetter, but really, generally a little bit drier than average in most western, central and eastern parts of Europe. It does look particularly dry in this southeastern corner, so like from Italy over the Adriatic into the Balkans and then down to Greece, looks quite significantly drier than average through those areas. But otherwise, it's a little bit wetter on either end of the Mediterranean, with Spain wetter than average, and also particularly over towards Greece and in towards over towards Turkey, I should say, and in towards the Middle East even, also a little bit or quite significantly wetter than average through those areas. Then we move on to week 2, which is week 13 for the year. This one takes us from the 23rd to 29th of March. Big changes here compared to what we've had for several weeks and months. Above average temperature anomalies are now being forced into the far north of Europe. So you have got the very far north of Europe looking significantly warmer than average there, around 3 to 6 degrees above average. More widely from Scandinavia through the Baltic in towards the west of Russia, around 1 to 3 degrees above average. But elsewhere, it actually looks like quite a cold scene, doesn't it, across most parts of Europe. So particularly in this eastern part Very much colder than average there, so sort of Ukraine down towards the Balkans, around the Black Sea, down towards Greece and Turkey. Again, those areas are looking below average temperatures forecast by around 3 to 6 degrees at the coldest. Also looks pretty chilly for Ireland and the UK. We're a little bit below average as well. Most other parts of Europe sort of average to perhaps slightly below. So Italy, for example, is slightly below average. Eastern parts of Spain, slightly below average. Northern France, slightly below average. And even into like southern Poland, a little bit below average there. Germany and the Low Countries near normal. This is definitely a cooler week, or a colder week, than we've seen. Probably the coldest week that we've seen on these temperature anomaly charts from the ECMWF for several months, actually. For much of Europe, you'll know that we have an exceptionally mild few months of it, and that's probably the most widespread below average temperature anomaly forecast that we've seen for several months from the ECMWF. And precipitation-wise, from the 23rd to 29th of March. So we've got the very, very far northwest of Europe, particularly Norway, into northern parts of Scotland, where it's a bit above average. Also got eastern parts of Spain, looking a bit wetter than average. Not as wet around Turkey. It looks like it's drying out there a little bit. And then otherwise, most parts of Europe again, average, slightly drier than average, really. And particularly through the central part of the Mediterranean, also over towards northern Spain and Portugal, there it looks quite significantly drier than average. Most other areas just a little bit drier than normal. So a relatively dry end to March, but quite a coldish sort of end to March being forecast. Week 3, which is week 14th of the year, takes us from the 30th of March to the 5th of April. Then we see that we're losing most colder than average temperature anomalies and going above average, or still above average, in northern and eastern and northeastern parts of Europe, so really from Scandinavia down to the Black Sea, above average temperatures there. Western parts of Russia, 3 to 6 degrees above average through there. The central part of the Mediterranean, also a little bit milder than average. On either side of the central Med, so in the eastern Med and also in the western Med, it does look a little bit cooler through those areas. And then up through France, sort of much of Germany, Low Countries, UK, Ireland, close to average with temperature anomalies through those areas. Week 3 precipitation from the 30th of March to 5th of April forecast to be, again, largely dry than average. The signal is weakening. The further out we go, the weaker the signal becomes. But yes, we do see slightly drier than average precipitation being forecast from Ireland and the UK in the west, towards the west of Russia. The Med looks more unsettled, especially the central bowl of the Mediterranean, so from like eastern Spain and into the Balearic Islands, Mallorca, Minorca and Ibiza, and then through Corsica, Sardinia, Malta, over to Italy. All those areas do look rather unsettled in this early part of April, with above average rainfall being forecast. But most places north of the Med generally looking a little bit on the drier than average side, except in the far north of Scandinavia perhaps. And then we move through to week 4, which is week 15 for this year. It takes us from the 6th through to the 12th of April. And by then, we see above average temperature anomalies forecast for northern parts of Europe again, into west of Russia. Central parts of the Med look a little bit milder than average around the Black Sea up to southern Ukraine, also a bit milder than average there. Otherwise, again, quite widely across Europe, we see near normal precipitation being forecast, near normal temperatures, I should say, being forecast, with no particular deviation either way. Of course, the further out we go, the weaker the signal is becoming. I would guess that by the time we get through to this week 4 period, we are probably hinting at being on the milder than average side, except perhaps away from Ireland and the UK, where it could be a bit colder there. But overall, I think we're shifting through early April, probably more towards the milder side of things after quite a cold end to March. And then finally, precipitation-wise, week 4, well, a very weak signal by this point, as it usually is. Some of these central parts of Europe, so around Germany and Poland, those sort of areas, Austria, for example. It does look a little bit drier than average through there, but otherwise, maybe a bit wetter than average across the far north of Scandinavia and some parts of central Med, bit above average. But really, we're seeing this 2 week to be able to decipher much there either way for precipitation from the 6th through to the 12th of March, just too far out for the model to have a clear signal. So it certainly looks like the latter part of March is going to be rather colder than we've had for quite some time, to average. Of course, it won't be. It is sort of late March, so it won't be as cold as it would be in sort of January. But nevertheless, it does look to average. We're going to have one of our colder weeks than we've had for quite some time in the final week of March. And then probably a bit of a recovery in temperature taking place as we move through into April. Precipitation wise, it looks like it's varying from area to area. Overall, relatively dry, though, really, I think is a signal, both through late March and into early April, through many areas. There are exceptions, such as the central part of the Mediterranean, eastern parts of Spain, for example, as we've already explained. It's just a snapshot of what the model is showing. Any forecast beyond 5 to 7 days is fraught with danger, so it could all look very different next week. And, of course, we will do it all over again next week. We'll be back later on with your week to 10-day video update, so come back for that then. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.